IBM making a big deal. On Sunday, IBM agreeing to buy Red Hat for $33 billion or $190 in cash per share. Now, that is a 63% premium to where Red Hat closed on Friday. That sounds like a lot, right?
Sounds like a lot.
Yeah, not bad. And IBM CEO Ginni Rometty says the deal is all about, quote, resetting the cloud landscape. Okay, so Emily, I want to get into that here in a minute. The press release announcing the deal describes Red Hat as, quote, the world's leading provider of open source cloud software. And when you look at the deal, shares of Red Hat up around 47% today. IBM down a little. So good deal for IBM?
I think it's a necessary deal for IBM. And it's an interesting deal for Red Hat. For a little fun facts, this is actually the third largest deal in the U.S. history for tech. So
that is kind of fun.
It is a fun fact. And it is to say that you'll notice that Red Hat shares are not exactly at that $190 price. And that's attributable to the fact that this will need regulatory and shareholder approval before it moves forward. I would expect that to happen. So it's an exciting deal for IBM. IBM have been posting really stagnant growth over the past few years. So they needed to do something. They were losing out horribly to competitors like Amazon and Microsoft in the space. So this acquisition for them is an attempt to control every part of the cloud ecosystem for an enterprise. So if you're an enterprise and you have a lot of physical assets in terms of a traditional information storage and you're looking to move towards a cloud environment, what they do is they have an inter-between phase where you're operating on a hybrid cloud environment. So this deal is going to allow IBM to get in on the hybrid cloud environment space and help companies transition to that cloud environment. And so they're using Red Hat to do that.
Yeah, I mean, I think she hit the nail on the head there, and that it was a necessary deal for IBM. And I feel like we've been talking about IBM sort of just sitting there doing nothing over the past decade, more or less, as every other tech company we discuss seems to be just flying right past it. So typically with big tech companies like this that are a little bit more based on legacy success, you have to go in there and make a big deal like this. That's why it's such a premium, I think. IBM really wants this. They don't want Red Hat to go shopping around to see if someone wants to up the ante a little bit. And so they're paying, obviously, a very heavy premium today. It more than likely goes through, I guess. I mean, perhaps there's some scrutiny there. But I think for me, when I looked at the two companies, I think this really tells you everything you need to know. When you look at the companies and you note the disparity in the research and development line item on their income statements. If you look at R&D as a percentage of revenue, for Red Hat is about 20%. They're plowing a lot of that money they make back into the business because they need to keep relevant and keep advancing. IBM's around 7%. Wow. And they're basically doing that just to tread water. And that's what they've been doing for, a long time now. So, to see them make a big deal like this isn't surprising. I think Red Hat's a good business. The fundamentals are sound. Whether IBM actually does anything really good with it remains to be seen.
And when you look at IBM, the stock, it hasn't even been treading water. You look over the last 5 years, and Emily, we were talking about this before the show. Yeah. Shares are down. You have lost money on IBM over the last 5 years. I mean, that's pretty tough to do in this market.
Yeah, and it had the reputation for the longest time of if you couldn't really figure out what kind of market it was and how you should be investing, well, you could always just buy shares of IBM, and no one would really hold that against you because of its standing in the tech space. But obviously tech has changed so much in just the recent years, and certainly IBM hasn't really been spearheading that change.
So I want to talk more about this idea of resetting the cloud landscape. IBM CEO says that big companies have moved around 20% of their work to the cloud. So if you take that, let's just take that as our starting point. That leaves around 80%, right, that all of these different companies are competing for. So IBM and Red Hat can go after that 80%. But we've got a few competitors. So let's just review of some of the names in that space. Amazon, Microsoft, and Google.
So what's interesting about Red Hat is because they are focused on open source platforms. So when a person goes out and buys Red Hat, uses Red Hat as a provider. They're not actually buying any type of material software because all the code is already out there. If they wanted that, they could quite literally go onto GitHub and copy and paste it. What they're doing is they're buying Red Hat support. So the technology, the expertise that's needed to implement that. And so it's going to be really interesting to see how they compete because you'll notice that a lot of their competitors actually use Red Hat. So what IBM is trying to do is saying, hey, we're not going to be the big cloud provider that is Amazon Web Services, but we can at least be the system in which Amazon Web Services is operating on. And so Red Hat is known, their most widely subscribed product is Red Hat Enterprise Linux. It's the operating system that all this technology is running on. So what they're trying to do is just get in on the base level of that and try to be a player in the space without necessarily directly competing. And we mentioned earlier about kind of the culture around IBM, how it's been a slow growth company, not doing much in this space. I think that's where the controversy for this deal comes from, because a lot of people see Red Hat as an innovator, completely open source. I mean, any company that can make $2 billion selling something that's free is a good company in my book.
That's a good point.
So, I mean, the opportunity there for a cultural disillusion as this company that's been such an innovator, that's been open source, moves to this conglomerate, this large kind of slow tech company, it could be a hard pill to swallow for some employees. But IBM definitely needs the growth.
The old culture clash. We've heard that story before, right? I think back to AOL and Time Warner, so we will see how the deal shakes out.